are you certifiable? The moderator for this panel discussion is Virjay Sylvester, and I will introduce him really quickly here, and then we're going to call him to the stage to start actually welcoming the panelists. Mr. Virjay is a regional head of training and certified services of Moody's Analytics in the Middle East. He's based in Dubai, and he oversees markets, clients, and product strategy. Mr. Virjay has an extensive international banking and risk experience and a passion of education and educational culture. He combines these to deliver impactful learnings and risk management performance improvement for Moody's clients. Please join me welcoming Mr. Virjay to the stage.
Good morning, and thank you very much. I just like to that whole thing is really just a banker who's very passionate about education, and so that's where I am now. Today's session, and I realize we have a difficult job because we are the last session before lunch, so we'll try and make this as interesting as some good appetizers for yourselves. This is about are you certifiable, and how do you actually try and map certification programs or find programs that are relevant to the market. And the market we will also define as where we are today and where we are going. So we're going to use a group of panelists with varying background, people who've been long in the certification business and successful careers as well. So hopefully that will address this topic at a very broad level. I'd like to welcome on stage the panel. We have Mr. Lyndon Bird, who's Chief Knowledge Officer, DRI International. I'd like to welcome Mr. Saad Al-Sayari, currently Director General Human Resources with the Ministry of Commerce and Investment. Mr. Wahid Al-Qahtani, who needs no introduction. He was just hosting the previous session. He's also the president of the Association for Fraud Examiners, as distinct from fraudsters, Wahid, right? And we have Mr. Alastair Tyler, who's the director, London Institute of Banking and Finance. So this topic, and I'd just like to set the stage a little bit before the four gentlemen will take you on four different journeys in their respective worlds. So certification to me is nothing new. We've always had it in some shape and form, you will agree. So if you go back to when banking began, I always talk about, if you go back 100 years, what was the qualification necessary to become a banker? Was two things. You had to have a good reputation and good handwriting. That was certification in those days. And that has moved on to, let's say, when we started banking 30 years ago, my generation, then that time it was a graduate degree. At best, another professional degree like the Institute of Chartered Accountants, which is where I come from, and that was certification necessary for the job. Simply what happened at that time, things changed slowly, and a lot has been said about the speed of change. Things changed slowly, but those were adequate qualifications for you to perform. With the rapid change, I think certification has assumed different proportions. I think organizations tend to look at people in two aspects: experience and knowledge. And experience carried a lot more weight in the past. And in this transformation journey, I dare say it still is necessary, but the attention to relevant current knowledge needed here and now is where this whole certification discussion becomes important. And certification simply because you want proof of that competence. So many leaders are unable for themselves to judge what is the extent of qualification needed, hence certification, industry standards all come into play. And the other sort of relevant issue now, at Moody's we've done a lot of research into learning, and one of the findings we published a little while ago was if you do not renew your learning every 4 to 5 years, you will reach 100% chance of starting to make some errors in your work. So you will make errors earlier if you don't keep learning, but if you don't learn for 4 or 5 years, don't renew, don't make it current, you have 100% chance of some errors coming into your work. And that's the frightening statistic that makes, I think, all of us sit here and talk about what we are discussing. A lot of people come to us and ask us a question on, so how will you make training relevant? How will you make it of the right standard? And I think today we just had a discussion in the previous panel that spoke about, and the question that came from the audience was about how do you make somebody who's certified still useful? Is that enough? And I think where most training is going today, and there's a lot of discussion about a combination of training, and when I say training, it's training and certification. I talk about both in the same. It's training and on-the-job training. So there is the partnership, as quite rightly pointed out in the session before by you, sir, it's about the partnership between the employee and the employer about making sure that work experience and training leverage off each other turn by turn. So training back to on the job, back to training, mentoring, and that's the only way that you will keep this moving forward. And from my side, then, I would like to finish by saying the question that I ask most people is, are you a learning organization? And as you know, my last few roles as Chief Risk Officer, the biggest risk we faced was from rapid change. Managing change was the biggest risk, whether it's regulation, whether it's anything, technology, competing with high technology participants. It's that which made things most difficult. And the only solution, and whether that's a discussion with your children or with the generation that's coming into work, it's about how can you be nimble and agile to manage change? What you do today will not be relevant tomorrow. Perhaps not tomorrow, but in that sort of shorter time frame. In that background, how do you stay current? And that is only possible if you are a learning organization, a learning individual who constantly believes he does not know enough, needs to know more, and that is the only way that you can have the right sort of progress and some form of sustainability in today's world. With that, I'm going to start our panel presentations. I'd like to then call on Mr. Lyndon Bird. He has an exclusive sort of niche area where he has been in the business of business continuity since 1986. As Chief Knowledge Officer for the New York-based DRI International, he sort of chairs their Future Vision Committee. So we are excited to hear from him how he looks into the future on this. He's involved in regular publishings. He's also the chairman and technical director of the Business Continuity Institute and author of one of the sort of resource guide and chief author for operational resilience in the financial sector. As somebody who often speaks around the world, I'm sure we all look forward to that. Please welcome Mr. Lyndon Bird.
Thank you very much. I used to be called technical director, and I always used to start my presentations by saying I'm sure the slides will go wrong, but you know that's not the sort of technical stuff I do. Hopefully we have the slides today, because we have a few slides we'd like to show you. But before I do that, I've got a few points that have come home to me in listening to the previous presentations this morning, and it's great not being first on because you get the chance to comment. One of the things that struck me was I listened to presentations from technology experts, from financial experts, from people in the chemical, petrochemical industry. And each of those industries, in my many years in business now, I know I don't look old enough to be doing all of that, but thank you. I am, and I've had experience in all of those three sectors. One of the things that you can say about those sectors is one thing in common. There's many things in common across business, but one thing in common is if anything goes wrong in any of those areas, it goes wrong in a pretty big way. So the consequences may be very different if something goes wrong in finance than if it goes wrong in a major chemical plant, but it goes wrong in a big way. It goes wrong in a way that is very newsworthy. It goes wrong in a way that can often, particularly in the chemical side, be very bad in terms of casualties, loss of life. In the financial side, the loss of life may be indirect rather than direct, but the consequences on economies and world peace even can be affected by such things. So one thing that we are talking about all the time is our vision for 2030, not just in Saudi Arabia, but also around the world. What are our visions? And our visions are always about growth, about new technologies, about where the world is going to go. But the problem is, the faster we go with change, the more likely it is we'll have disruption. And so, in the same way as I believe that we need to ensure that the quality of people that are driving that change is maintained, we also need to ensure that the quality of people that are protecting us from the consequences of that change failing is also maintained. And that's where I feel that what I've done over the last 30 years comes in. It's not about stopping change, it's not about slowing change, it's about managing change in a way that is sustainable. That's what we in the institute I now currently work for are concerned about, the sustainability and the ability for us to manage change in an effective way and the professional way that we actually go about that. So that is really the introduction to what I'm going to say. My institute that I am representing today is what was originally called the Disaster Recovery Institute. We now prefer to call ourselves DRI International. Why is that? Because disasters have a largely negative connotation, and we're not really talking about negativity in here. We're talking about a very positive way of managing business in a professional and constructive manner. And we do that by developing people. We develop them through training. We develop them by the way that they actually can exercise and prepare for dealing with contingencies and situations that may go wrong. And we train them in ways that they can recover from inevitable problems when they cannot entirely prevent them. So this is what our institute is about. It's about training, preparation, recovery, and I'd say it's about more than that. I'd say it's about sustainability. What do we do and where do we do it? Well, we do it all around the world. We're based in the United States. As you possibly can tell from my accent, I'm not an American. Some of you can clearly tell that, more than others perhaps, but I'm based in the UK, but I report into our team in New York. My role as Chief Knowledge Officer is effectively to monitor where the subject is going and how we should make sure that our certifications programs are always in line with the trends in business that we need to stay current with. So that's where I fit in. How large are we? Well, since we've been in business since 1988, we have educated and examined over 40,000 people. We claim, however, that at the moment we have over 15,000 current certified professionals. And why is the 40,000 reduced to 15? Is because with the DRI you don't just do an examination and that's the end of it, you're a DRI person forever. No, we have an ongoing continuous professional development an education program. So only the people that continue in the profession, that continue to meet our standards and our requirements, continue to be current professionals. In the last 5 or 6 years, then the growth in our professionalism has been almost entirely outside of the United States. In business continuity and disaster recovery, there is a certain maturity in the United States, in the United Kingdom, and in other parts of Europe. There is less of a maturity in the rest of the world, and that's where most of the interest and the growth in the protective disciplines, which are rapidly becoming more called resilience disciplines, has started to occur. So we now offer courses in 50 countries, and we actually offer them in 14 different languages. We are not only about training, we're also about trying to train and build awareness of the subject around related areas of business. So the fact that you may be involved in technology, in finance, in chemicals is irrelevant. You still need to understand how to protect your business through your business continuity programs. Just very briefly run through where I fit. I fit in a committee that actually tries to link new activities. So young leaders, women in business, our glossaries, our certification programs. And we link all of that together with what we call the future visions. And that's my role, to bring all of this together. We look at things like trends. I haven't got time to talk about these trends particularly, and we publish regular reviews of trends in the resilience world. Just very briefly though, if you actually look at the 4 quadrants there, and if you look at the one at the bottom on the right-hand side, you will see that those are the areas we think currently most impact resilience professionals. And if we had time to look at that, probably about 70% of those key ones are technology related in some form or other. Quite interestingly, of course, the recent ransomware experiences around the world have illustrated quite clearly. And I'm pleased to say I would have been a little embarrassed if it had not been on the list, but number 3 on our list of resilience issues was cyber attacks, including ransomware. So at least we are current with that prediction. Very quickly, these are the areas. You can look at the presentation later, but these are the areas of what we certify people in. They take us through project management and through to coordination with external authorities. And in the middle of there's all the heart of what we do: impact analysis, risk analysis, strategy development, planning, testing, exercising, the key issues. And we have a range of certification. Each of them depend upon your experience and your background and where you fit in. The last thing I'd like to say just before closing on my session is certification is not about passing an exam. Certification is about meeting, in our view, 4 pillars. Knowledge, and the training and examination covers the knowledge, but also the competence through your skills, your experience, your record, what you actually do and how you do it. And proof of that is important to a professional. Thirdly, how you do it, how you behave, your standards of behavior, your ethics, your quality of what you do. And finally, and just as important, currency, making sure that you are current and up to date with the changes in your profession. So that's what DRI is about, and that's what I think any professional institute is about. So thank you very much.
I was trying to see which is the next presentation, but I can't do that now, so I'll take a chance. And I'd request Mr. Wahid Al-Qahtani, who's President, Association of Fraud Examiners, to be the next speaker. He's currently as an auditing consultant with internal audits. He was responsible for setting up, designing, implementing, and administering the General Auditor Hotline. He has over 16 years of work experience with Saudi Aramco and 10 more with other firms in the kingdom. He's worked on many studies related to fraud and ethics, code of conduct, anti-fraud programs. And he has, apart from his bachelor's and master's from King Saud University in computer engineering, He is a certified information systems auditor. He has a lot of background in computer forensics and online fraud, and he qualified as a member of the ACFE in 2008. The only other thing I'll say is Wahid's an active public speaker and a Toastmaster. Wahid, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Shall I say good morning or good afternoon? Assalamu alaikum. This is like a personal story because I started originally with IT. I have a bachelor in computer science and master in computer science from King Saud University. So I have a bachelor degree in computer science, and I worked like 15 years in IT until I reached this moment where I become very confident that IT is no longer sufficient. I'm a big fan of certificates, so during the 15 years, I get certified in Microsoft and other networking and communication, Cisco, as well as Force Systems, something that dies like 10 years ago. When I reached this moment, I believe something called the death of IT, I decided to go to finance. So I'm trying through this, my presentation, to answer many of the questions that is raised in this panel discussion. Is how you pick the right certification, how you make sure that you are going in the right direction, how to convince management that what you are spending is basically benefiting the entire organization. So I'm trying to do this very quickly. Over the last 10 years, I decided to start with a certification that I'm going to discuss it with you later in this presentation, which is the Association of the Certified Fraud Examiners. I wanted to enter finance, and I wanted to make it a smooth and easy entrance. So I thought that this is something very much closer to what I've been doing in IT. You know, I spent 10 years, 15 years, and the last 3 years I've been doing hacking. So I thought maybe, since I know a lot of computer hacking and social engineering, that could be a good entrance. So I did examination of available certification, and I picked this one. Later, I joined the Association of the Compliance and Ethics Professional. I gained the CCEP certification. So together, I will try to answer these questions, okay? And I will use later the Association of the Certified Fraud Examiner as an example. Let's start with the first question. What should you look while you're choosing the certification? Basically, credential, recognition. There are so many certifications available now, but which one you pick, it's very important. And I think you have to go through all the available certification. You have to shortlist them and pick the one that will be recognized not only globally, but locally, and also in your organization that you work for, and will help you in your future. Complexity is very important. You will see certifications that are very attractive. However, they are complicated. You have to go through so many exams. You have to go through so many materials. Probably to renew the certification, you have to go through so many steps. So complexity is a very important element that determines whether you pick a certification over the other or not. Another thing is the financial commitment. Believe me, some of the certification, it's easy to get, it's very hard to maintain. IT is one of them. The certification of the Certified Fraud Examiner is one of the easy and simple certification to maintain. Now, what about the plan? How to prepare a plan? I always say that failing to plan is 100% is a perfect plan to fail. So basically, you gather information, and when you scan the available certification, look at the preparation tool. The preparation tool will give you an idea about whether you should or you are able of taking this certification or not. It's very important to evaluate yourself. And if you come across a certification that will not provide you with a tool to assess your availability, skip it, forget it. Put a plan. Like the CFE, when I started thinking about to be a certified fraud examiners, I moved from IT all the way to finance. So it took me a longer preparation plan. It took me like a year to prepare for the certification. I basically took the certification in 1 month, but preparation was a longer period. And then execute. 2 minutes. Oh my God, that is my last slide. How to avoid disappointment? Do your homework. Basically, do the proper research, conduct the proper assessment, ask friends, go to the internet, visit their website, and you will be surprised with the amount of information that you have. Now, I have a number of slides about the certification. I'm not here to promote the certification of the ACFE as much as encouraging everyone to step forward and look for the proper certification. We came from a background where people believe in education only. I remember my dad, for example, say, you either become a doctor or an engineer. Now I teach my son is focus on certification. And these certifications will give you an idea, an opportunity to correct a previous wrong education decision. So if you start like me in IT and you want to change after 5 or 3 years, this is a good opportunity. With that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will like to now invite Mr. Alastair Tyler, who's the Director, London Institute of Banking and Finance. Alastair is a senior banking professional with a strong academic inclination. His background is largely in asset finance, corporate, commercial, and investment banking. He spent a lot of time with the likes of Barclays. I think it was Abbey National Treasury, lots of international large transactions across the globe. He's also worked with Deloitte, more recently aligning with the regulators, reviewing various banks in the city. So he brings with him a pretty balanced background of banking, sort of in the industry space and education. And I would like to welcome Alastair to share his views in his capacity in London Institute.
Well, thank you very much. I just wanted, just by way of a few opening remarks, to say how grateful I've been. It's wonderful to be here in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I've been given a fantastic welcome, literally from the moment I stepped off the plane. And to come to this conference, I have the opportunity to, fortunate enough to attend many conferences around the world. And I have to say, this really does stand out in so many ways because of the quality, the professionalism. Also, I like the fact that there's the diversity, but yet focus. Diversity because we're looking at many different sectors, so we're getting different perspectives. It's a great way to share practice, share best practice, and to learn from each other. But the focus is very clear. There's a challenge here about professionalism. And I think, as Jim mentioned earlier, this is an issue that's going around the world. So the digital age that we live in is changing all of our perceptions, the whole workplace, the skills, etc. So we all are having to respond fast to this changing environment. But there we are. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the London Institute of Banking and Finance. There we are. So we've been around a long time. We were formed in 1879. So we're one of the oldest banking institutes in the world. So we've been pretty busy. In 1987, we received a royal charter, which reflected the quality of our qualifications and the support we've been giving to the banking and finance industry, not just in the United Kingdom, but around the world, where we've been involved in supporting the development of many banking and finance institutes. We've also been involved in the UK, but starting it to be internationally, promoting financial capability. This is teaching young people how to manage money and finance. And the needs surrounding this are probably greater today than ever, given the accessibility that the digital world gives to young people, many of whom are quite vulnerable. But perhaps one of our proudest moments came in 2010, when we were the first professional body to be awarded our own taught degree awarding powers. Now, this is a really exciting point, and something actually that came up this morning, because our students that complete full-time degrees with us at our small campus in the city then have the opportunity just to gain some work experience, and they can gain our Chartered Associateship, which is our highest professional award. So in other words, what we're doing there is we're interlinking the higher education, the degree program, with a professional program. Okay. And there we are. We carry on our sort of journey, University College. We have a University College within our institute. In 2016, though, one of the other very important things that we've been doing, and we've been looking to do ever more, is to listen to our customers, you know, our key relationships. What do they want? And what they were telling us is that the world is changing very fast. They need more flexibility. They need qualifications that are standalone, that link to the skills, the competency, the conduct skills that are relevant for today. So we did a lot of work to redesign our professional program, lots of specialist qualifications which are relevant for an international audience, particularly in countries such as Saudi Arabia, where there is a great desire to raise professional standards. So, and there we are. So that's 20, and that's our journey, really, and the journey carries on. Okay, so our role as a professional body, really just to summarize, we have 4 main areas of activity. As I said, we literally are quite unique in the UK. We have what we call level 1 to level 7 qualifications. The good news at London Institute of Banking and Finance is we offer qualifications at all levels, 1 to 7, from schools all the way up to our master's program, which is online and available for students to study around the world. And we support the industry as well, very much, not just through qualifications, but also through continual professional development. This is a really important area, as was mentioned by Vijay. If you don't keep your knowledge up to date, if you did qualifications 20 years ago, what value are they in today's environment? So it's very, very important that you continue to invest in your educational, both from an individual's perspective, but also from an organizational. So here's just a few of our credentials. We have students in 120 countries around the world. We have some great examples of internationally recognized qualifications. We've been around a long time. We have 30,000 young people studying with us and over 20,000 students studying on the professional programs. A new professional framework. As I say, we have qualifications at 3 levels, what we call the practitioner level, which is really the people on the ground doing the job, whether it's in operations, whether it's in credit, whether it's in any real area of banking and finance. So we wanted to map to those skills. Then we look at the professional level, which is where you're taking on more responsibility, be it managerial, etc. And then at the final level, you're an expert. This is where you're looking at strategy, where you're looking at leadership. And we have individual qualifications that map to those levels. Okay, so that's really what it's about. And we cover many different sectors. Okay, so it's just a few examples of our qualifications. As I say, we have 3 qualifications in trade finance, which are effectively licensed to practice qualifications. So if you want to be a trade finance professional, managing documentary credits, selling products to your customers, you need to have this qualification. Now, what makes this qualification have currency is the partnership we have with the International Chamber of Commerce, the ICC, which is obviously a global organization. And that's really helped us to raise the standards and qualification. We're also very excited about a new qualification which we've just launched with the SWIFT Institute on principles of payments. Again, big focus on raising international standards in an area of payments which is moving at a very fast pace in the digital age. Okay, we do also run some short in-house courses. There's a list there. I know training has had a little bit of a bad, there's been some bad comments made about training this morning. Now, maybe they're made with some, fairness, but I think the challenge for us who are involved in professional education is to make sure that training is relevant, okay, and that we can ensure that it is effective. So there are many ways to do that. A lot of it, similar really to qualifications, is to involve some assessment. Why not assess the knowledge, the skills, the competency of your staff before they start the course and then after they finish the training course? That's a good way of measuring the effectiveness of the training. So we'll see, we cover many different areas for our training program. We also have executive education, because remember, lifelong learning isn't just for the people at the lower levels, it's also for staff and leaders at the very high level. And there's been a lot of challenges in the banking and finance at board level around, for example, whether members of board have got the knowledge and skills to manage banks, which are very complex organizations. This is just a few examples of some of our corporate partners around the world, banks like HSBC, Barclays, Standard Chartered, that have a global footprint. And we work closely with them to understand what their needs are. But we also are very aware that we stand to support not just our corporate customers, but also the individuals, the people who are working day in, day out, and really to instill professionalism, to support them along their journey. And as I think was mentioned, particularly in an environment where many organizations don't really know what the job descriptions will look like in 5 years' time, it's important that we are flexible, we are agile, we are responsive both to our corporates and our individual members. Just a few more examples of what we do across our membership. We try to offer a range of events, podcasts, lots of ways of involving people interactively without physically having to be there. All of our qualifications are online. Okay, so that's just about our membership. Very, very quickly, if those of you who went to school many years ago may remember something called the 3 R's. You remember going to school, the reading, writing, and arithmetic? Well, we came up with the idea that when it comes to professional certification, there should be 4 R's. Okay, I'm very mindful that time is against me, but there's your 4 R's. So what's your way of your benchmarking those qualifications? Regulation. Are your qualifications regulated? All of our qualifications are in a regulatory framework. What's the recognition in terms of local and international? What's the reputation? Yes, do people actually, what are the credentials? Are people using this professional certification? Is it something that they want to put on their CV? And what's the reward? Yes, what skills are you learning? How's it improving your employment prospects? Okay, so there we are. There's no, as was mentioned earlier, you've got to do your research. Don't be lazy. You've got to find out what's relevant to your own needs. Okay, planning your exams, as you can see, we again, when I'm teaching, and I've been teaching for 25 years, we adopt what we call an assessment-led approach. Yes, so it's important to remember what we're trying to demonstrate at the end of it, which is to build up the knowledge, the skills, okay? And assessing is a great way of doing that. Okay, well, there we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And for our last speaker, we are very pleased to have Mr. Saad Al-Sayari, who's the Director General HR for the Ministry of Commerce and Investment. Saad has had over 14 years of experience in multiple fields, be it IT, HR, transformation, change agendas, and he's worked through various ministries as well. He's had experience before this with Mobily, again, looking at HR strategy, organizational development, human capital enablement. And some time before that, he was the Ministry of Higher Education in charge of an e-services program that essentially looked to support, I think it was 150,000 scholarships for Saudi students across the globe. So really looking to your insights locally, and if to share that with us, please welcome Mr. Saad Al-Sayari.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Professional certification, it is the part that we're going to discuss in this session. The mismatch between the education ecosystem and the organization and what they really need. So from the universities, this is the illustration is almost giving you a clear vision about what usually the presentation or what usually the universities coming up from faculties, health, education, agriculture, engineering, IT, business administration, so on forth, almost 30, 20, 30 kind of colleges. This is what usually they are presenting, the university's point of view. But what is the other side of the formula, which is the organization? The organization built in a way to contribute effectively to achieve the vision of the organization itself. So it's not necessarily direct match between the organization structure and the ecosystem of the education. I'm not here to criticize the education, but this is one of the issues that we are facing today. Unemployment, it's a risky indicator that we are facing in our country, and I believe in the region. However, how this formula is contribution. When I look at the age segment or the life journey that all of us passing through it, I can classify it to 4 main stages. The first stage, it is the childhood. All of us pass through it. The second phase or the second segment, which is the studying phase, and almost when we graduate from the university, we will be at the age of 22, something like this. And then we spend for the third stage from our life in the organizations. I'm talking about the employment part. I'm not talking about the entrepreneurs or the business people. And the rest, or the fourth segmentation, which is the retirement. So the third stage or the third segment, we spend almost 2/3 of our life in the organizations. Imagine that. So really, it is very important to look at it from that perspective and to invest in the right time and the right tools. What is the main issues from this one? How we can make the link? Most of our graduates, they are suffering from unemployment, and most of organizations, they are suffering from not finding the right caliber to participate in their organization. So we have 2 issues. The first issue, the bridge between the graduates or the education to the organization. And the second issue is, after being an employee, how to grow in the ladder in your organization. So the professional certification, it's a tool that can contribute in a way that can help in this illustration. This is my point of view when we discuss it from educational point of view. I did a small research and I discovered also a risk indicator as well. This is happens in UK, 2015. They are talking about 350,000 graduates in the year. However, almost half of those who manage to find work will be entering jobs that do not formally require a degree. What does it mean? Either that they are engaging to a labor market for a high school or for a secondary school or for whatever, that it doesn't link to the education system. So there is an issue. We have to look at it from this perspective. Professional certification, it's a huge domain, actually. It's not like the education system 30 and 40. They are exceeding 45 domains. And in terms of professional certification, we are talking about over than 300 certification. So the question is, what to pick from that certification for you as an individual or for you as an organization to offer to your staff? We have to think about it from this perspective in order to achieve what we'd like to know. What I do recommend to anyone is to think about it from another way, which is why, how, what model. Everything in our life, in social life, academic life, work life, anything that we are doing it for a purpose. So we have to think about why we are doing this, why we are going to this university, why we are acting or behaving or working in this organization. So the research shows that very few people, they identify the why part. However, some of them, the how part, they are doing fine in it. Almost all of us, they are doing the what part. So why is representing the vision. So you have to have a vision for yourself in order to achieve what you'd like to have. Also, the how part is the tactics and the strategy. So the professional certification, at the end, it is in the what. Anyone, my friend, the one that I pick him for a story, when he achieved 100 certification, he is doing the what part. But how he do it, why he is taking it, he doesn't spend any time to do it. And I think it's worthwhile to spend more time in order to define why we are taking this certification. Career planning, it's the solution for anyone who should know which kind of certification he'd like to take and build his career. So the career, it's a journey. Most of practitioners or professional people who's achieving, reaching to a CEO level or a VP level or whatever, they pass through different time or stages from their life. However, it's a career, it's a long journey. So you need to design it well. Do not let the time pass. There is a homework, you should do it from your side, and there is a consultation and advice, you should take it from other people. But taking the certification just for the sake of taking the training, it's not will be helpful for you in your career. This is the last slide. I'd like just to take one of those examples, imagining the organization. This is the normal org structure. I pick one of those staff. Let's assume someone, he is in HR department, and he engage in this department today. Which kind of certification he need to constrain and to focus in order to reach to his goal. Before that, he should draw what is his goal. He would like to be what? In the next 10 years or 5 years. If he design his route correctly from the beginning, then he can design and pick the right certification for him. As example, this guy, he is planning to be a head of HR, okay, from after 10 years from now or after 5 years from now, and then he can select. This is just an example for a professional certification in HR field, such as CIBD, psychometric assessment, Hay Group certification, that can help you in designing your route. But if you pick the wrong certification, usually it will be a wrong investment in the wrong place. So this is one of those examples that I'd like to share with you, and thank you for listening, and I hope that I add value for you in this evening. Thank you.
Would there be any question from the audience?
My name is Steve Harper. I work for Oakwood International. And one of the things that we see a lot of our students thinking about, and this is the question that I wanted to ask you, the panel members, is we hear statistics like 50% of the jobs that people in the millennial generation will be doing don't exist today. And we hear statistics like my own son, who is 30 years old, he's already had 3 jobs that didn't exist when I was his age. So how does the certification and qualification, when we're so focused on certification being an end to a means to an end, which is to add value to your career and organization, how do we respond to that challenge where the professional world is changing so very fast? How do we keep the certification up with that?
I think it's a very interesting one. So if we look at the case of banking and finance, what we're seeing is there's massive changes coming through digital technology. A lot of people will have heard about fintech and how all these businesses are growing, etc. But what's very interesting about the banking and finance industry is that unlike, say, Amazon, which has taken over all the bookshops, in the case of banking, because the risks that relate to banking and finance are core, they're fundamental. There's systemic risk, there's credit risk, there's operational risk. So actually a lot of the fundamentals need to be understood. So what we really need to be doing is, if you like, giving what I sometimes call sort of 360-degree vision. So they need to have the ability to look back, to understand about the fundamentals, learn from the mistakes of the past. They need to have good sort of, side vision to see what's going on now and make sure what they're doing is relevant. But they also need to be forward-looking as well. So absolutely, they need to embrace the digital age, the data analytics, all of those IT literate skills, which are very, very important. So I think it's really trying to synthesize the different skill sets. Thank you.
Either if you'd like to give a context in the Saudi market, please.
Yeah, thank you for this question. It is a very important question. One of the recent papers that I look at it recently, it's about China. In China, they are doing a lot of tweaking in their education system in order to having graduates from their talents for a job which is not exist today. And this is very, very right that you are talking about it. One of the most important thing which is you emphasize here is the job creation. Creating a job which is not exist today. Who is doing this? what is the role of or the contribution that participate in this issue. In my opinion, creation or job creation, there is two major things. One of them is the revolution in the world in terms of economic, in terms of technology, whatever. And the second thing is the strategic vision of the government, because the government is playing a major role over here. Either that they create a job from their own, or to cope with the market and overcome the challenges that happens in the world. Now, how we can build our millennium, how we can build our talents in order to face those challenges, I believe the contribution should come through from different stakeholders, from the government, from the individual himself, or from the private sector. And this is one of the most important things that our 2030 vision is always constrained about, which is the partnership between the government and the private sector. We should sit in the same table and contribute effectively in order to achieve our visions. Contributing from private sector, and I really see there is a big room to invest and to innovate in terms of doing a lot of things in learning and development, education, and in order to have the right talent for those mystery jobs, if we can say, at the right time.
A lot of certification is focused at the foundation level in the past, at, if I might say, relatively junior to start of the mid-levels. The real challenge today, I'd say, is even if the education system does change, and it is trying to change, there are examples that will give us an input at, let's say, a relevant level. But for those who are now in their 30s and 40s, who need to change as they go through working life, that is the more difficult audience that certification or the continuing education needs to address. And I think that's the real challenge because of the speed of change. Yeah, I'm going to have to give in to my colleague. So first of all, just a big thanks to the panel for the, yeah, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. It was a great panel discussion. We really appreciate the feedback, the thoughts, the insight provided. Thank you very much.